The film opens with a group of four longtime friends beginning a trekking trip into the remote wilderness of northern Sweden. The area is completely cut off from civilization, with no phone signals, no nearby towns, and miles of endless forest. The purpose of this journey is emotional rather than adventurous. They are fulfilling the final dream of their deceased friend Rob, who always wanted to visit these mountains before he died. A few months earlier, Rob and Luke had gone out drinking together in the city. On their way home, they stopped at a small convenience store late at night. While they were inside, armed robbers suddenly entered the shop. The criminals threatened everyone and demanded money. Terrified, Luke quickly hid behind a shelf instead of helping his friend. Rob, however, refused to stay silent and confronted the robbers. The criminals brutally attacked him while Luke remained hidden, too frightened to step in. Rob was beaten to death right in front of him. Since that horrifying night, Luke has carried overwhelming guilt. He constantly blames himself for not saving his friend. To honor Rob's memory, Luke convinces the remaining friends, Hutch, Phil, and Dom, to complete the hiking trip Rob always wanted to take. In the beginning, the group enjoys the adventure. They joke around, walk through beautiful mountains, and try to reconnect after months of grief. However, tension slowly grows among them because Dom is struggling physically during the trek. While hiking down a rough slope, Dom injures his knee badly. The injury makes walking extremely painful for him. The group checks the map and realizes the nearest lodge is still many hours away. Dom can barely move, so Hutch suggests taking a shortcut through a dense forest instead of following the longer mountain trail. Luke feels uneasy about entering the woods. But since they have no better option, everyone agrees. The moment they step into the forest, the atmosphere changes completely. The air feels heavy and strangely silent. There are no birds, no insects, and no signs of life. The trees are unbelievably tall, blocking most of the sunlight. The deeper they walk, the more unsettling the forest becomes. Soon, Hutch notices that the compass is spinning in random directions and no longer works properly. Not wanting to scare the others, he keeps this information to himself. As evening approaches, the group stumbles upon something horrifying. Hanging high between the trees is the corpse of a massive black bear. Its body has been ripped apart violently, with its stomach split open and blood dripping onto the forest floor. The sight shocks everyone because no ordinary animal could have done something so brutal. Still, they try convincing themselves it must have been hunters or another wild predator. Rain begins pouring heavily soon afterward, forcing the group to search for shelter. Deep in the woods, they discover an abandoned wooden cabin hidden among the trees. Although the place looks creepy and forgotten, they decide they have no choice except to stay there for the night. While exploring the upstairs area, Phil discovers a disturbing object standing in the middle of the room. It looks like a strange human-shaped figure made from sticks and straw, but it has no head. Instead, large antlers rise from its shoulders. The entire thing resembles some kind of ancient ritual statue. The others quickly gather around it, confused and frightened. Phil jokes nervously that it looks connected to black magic or pagan worship. Luke dismisses the idea, trying to calm everyone down, but the atmosphere inside the cabin becomes increasingly uncomfortable. As night falls, terrifying events begin happening one after another. Luke suddenly experiences a strange vision while trying to sleep. Bright flashes of white light fill his eyes, and he finds himself reliving the night Rob died in the convenience store. The memory feels so real that he cannot tell whether he is dreaming or awake. When he snaps out of it, he notices deep claw marks carved into his chest. Then a horrifying scream echoes through the cabin. Luke rushes downstairs and finds Hutch completely traumatized and shaking with fear. Dom appears trapped inside a terrible nightmare, screaming in his sleep. Phil is nowhere to be found. Panicked, Luke searches upstairs and discovers Phil kneeling naked in front of the strange antler statue as if hypnotized. Phil seems mentally disconnected from reality. Terrified by what happened inside the cabin, the group decides to leave immediately, even though it is still dark outside. As they continue walking through the forest, they begin noticing strange symbols carved into the trees around them. The markings look ancient and ritualistic, increasing everyone's fear. Dom's injured leg becomes worse with every step, slowing the group down. Luke decides to climb a nearby hill to see whether they are close to the edge of the forest. However, once he reaches the top, he notices a gigantic shape moving among the trees in the distance. The sight horrifies him so badly that he runs back down immediately. When he tells the others, they think he is imagining things due to stress. To prove something is wrong, Luke lifts his shirt and reveals the claw marks across his chest. He tells them that something in the forest is following them. As night arrives again, the group sets up tents because they are too exhausted to continue walking. While resting inside his tent, Luke hears strange noises outside. At first, he assumes it is one of his friends moving around. But when he carefully looks outside, he notices shadowy human-like figures standing silently among the trees. Suddenly, he experiences another terrifying vision of Rob's murder. Moments later, chaos erupts outside. A gigantic shadow rushes through the campsite and violently drags one of the tents away into the darkness. Terrified screams echo throughout the forest. Luke wakes up in panic, unsure whether it was another nightmare or reality. But then he realizes his friends are truly screaming nearby. When everyone gathers together, they discover Hutch has disappeared. A monstrous roar echoes from deep inside the woods along with Hutch's desperate cries for help. Despite their fear, the group runs through the forest searching for him. They wander all night but cannot find either Hutch or the path out of the woods. By morning, exhausted and hopeless, they discover Hutch's mutilated body hanging high in the trees exactly like the bear corpse they had seen earlier. His stomach has been ripped open and his internal organs removed. The horrifying sight confirms that a deadly creature is hunting them. Terrified, the remaining friends attempt to leave the forest as quickly as possible. Eventually, Luke climbs another high ridge and spots what looks like the forest's edge far away. For the first time, hope returns. However, he also notices smoke rising from somewhere below them, suggesting other people might live nearby. Before they can investigate further, disaster strikes again. Without warning, the creature attacks and drags Phil screaming into the darkness. Luke desperately chases after him, but finds only a flashlight lying on the ground. Phil has completely vanished. Now only Luke and Dom remain alive. The two men continue running through the forest in complete terror. Eventually, they discover lights coming from a small village-like area hidden deep among the trees. They rush toward a nearby cabin, believing they have finally found safety. But inside, an elderly woman suddenly appears. Before Luke and Dom can react, a giant shadow enters the room and both men are knocked unconscious. When Luke wakes up, he realizes they are tied up inside the cabin. Strange villagers move around silently, watching them carefully. The old woman approaches Luke and notices the claw marks on his chest. She smiles strangely and reveals similar marks on her own body. It becomes clear that the creature has somehow chosen Luke. However, when the villagers inspect Dom and find no marks on him, they drag him outside against his will. Luke struggles helplessly while Dom screams in terror. A woman calmly explains that Dom is being prepared as a sacrifice for the creature. Luke desperately tries freeing himself from the ropes. After multiple failed attempts, he painfully breaks several fingers in his hand to slip free. Outside, he secretly watches the horrifying ritual taking place. For the first time, Luke clearly sees the creature. The monster is gigantic and unnatural, with a twisted body resembling a mix between a giant beast and a human corpse. Its appearance is horrifying beyond imagination. Dom sees what appears to be his wife approaching him, making him briefly think he has been rescued. But as the figure comes closer, he realizes it is actually the creature manipulating his mind. Moments later, the monster kills Dom brutally and hangs his body among piles of old bones and corpses. Afterward, one of the village women tells Luke that the creature chooses people who carry deep pain and suffering inside them. It feeds on weakness, fear, and emotional trauma. Luke finally understands why the monster targeted him after sensing his guilt over Rob's death. Determined to survive and avenge his friends, Luke sneaks upstairs inside the building and discovers a horrifying secret. Several ancient villagers are sitting motionless in a dark room. Although they appear nearly dead, they are still alive. Luke realizes these people worship the creature in exchange for unnatural immortality. Furious, Luke sets the building on fire. Flames quickly spread through the structure while the villagers scream in terror. Enraged by the destruction of its followers, the creature attacks the village violently. Luke grabs a rifle and escapes into the forest while the monster chases him. The creature moves with terrifying speed, easily overpowering him multiple times. It repeatedly tries forcing Luke to kneel before it, just like the villagers did. But unlike before, Luke finally refuses to surrender. During the struggle, Luke spots an axe lying nearby. Gathering all his courage, he attacks the creature repeatedly and wounds it badly. The monster roars in pain, giving Luke enough time to escape. Luke runs through the forest with everything he has left. Finally, after a desperate sprint, he crosses the edge of the woods and reaches open land. Safe at last, He turns around and sees the creature standing at the forest boundary, unable to leave its territory. For the first time since Rob's death, Luke no longer feels controlled by fear or guilt. He screams back defiantly at the creature, refusing to bow before it. By facing the monster and surviving the nightmare, Luke finally overcomes the weakness that had haunted him for so long.